Conservation of nature and natural resources has been an integral part of the cultural ethos of tribal communities in Meghalaya. The tribal communities in Jaintia Hills who practice indigenous faith known as Nyamtre have protected and conserved several tracts of forest for religious and cultural belief. The Jaintia Hill is a home to several such undisturbed virgin forests, commonly known as sacred groves. The Nyamtre believes that their deity, Rengkau or Wasa, which guards them from natural calamities and disease as well as provide for their well-being, resides in these forests. The Nyamtre believes that cutting of trees, removal of fruits, seeds, or causing damage of any nature to these forests or even plugging a leaf except for the religious rituals will offend the deity and will bring ill luck to the offenders and also to the entire village. People are forbidden to carry leather articles, liquor, tobacco, and any other intoxicating materials inside a sacred grove to maintain its purity. Some of these forests are so sacred that one is required to remove shoes before entering into these forests. The Nyamtre or Nyamkhasi perform various religious rituals and sacrifices in sacred groves. As a mark of respect to the distinguished religious leaders and warriors, rock memorials have also been erected in some of the sacred groves. For Nyamtre and Nyamkhasi, sacred groves have same significance as a temple or a mosque or a church have for the people of Hindu, Muslim, and Christian faiths respectively. The sacred groves, which have remained undisturbed for centuries, are repositories of rich biodiversity. They are the last refuge for a large number of endemic, endangered, rare, and relic native taxa. Sacred groves are the last bastion where rich culture and customs of indigenous people are still preserved. Sacred groves are a living example of the strong symbiotic relationship between forests and local tribal communities in the Meghalaya. With the passage of time and gradual subordination of spiritual, cultural, and religious beliefs by materialistic needs, the belief which helped in preservation of sacred groves are eroding. The gradual erosion of this belief is resulting in degradation and shrinkage of several sacred groves. The absence of a proper regulatory and funding mechanism for conservation, protection, and scientific management has further accelerated the process of degradation of sacred groves. Vanishing of species in many of these sacred groves due to different anthropogenic disturbances like alteration of natural habitats, excessive utilization, pollution, and invasion of non-native species is so fast that many precious taxa may disappear even before they are identified, properly documented, and their scientific, cultural, therapeutic, and commercial values are discovered. The amendment of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 in 2003 came as a boon for conservation of sacred groves. Section 36C, inserted in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 by the said amendment, provides for notification of the sacred groves and similar community-owned areas having high conservation and cultural significance as community reserve. Section 36D, inserted in the Act in 2003, provides for preparation and implementation of management plan and to take steps to ensure the protection of wildlife and its habitat in the community reserve by a community reserve management committee consisting of 5 representatives nominated by the Gram Sabha or village level committee and 1 representative of the State Forest Department under whose jurisdiction the community reserve is located. The insertion of Clause 24A in Section 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act to define protected areas and inclusion of community reserve in the said definition paved the way for funding by the central government under the centrally sponsored scheme Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitat and by the state government under various state sector schemes for conservation and scientific management of community reserves. With the persuasion from the Forest and Environment Department, the local communities came forward to allow the state government to notify 70 biodiversity-rich community-owned areas, more than 6,200 hectares in extent, as community reserve in Meghalaya. Of these, 14 community reserves are located in Jaintia Hills. Many such potential and suitable areas are proposed to be notified as community reserve. Majority of these areas which have already been notified or are proposed to be notified as community reserve are sacred groves. The Forest and Environment Department, in consultation with local communities, have prepared management plan for scientific management and conservation of the notified community reserves. With the funds available under various state and central sector schemes, the Forest and Environment Department has undertaken various activities in community reserves. These activities include boundary demarcation by erection of boundary pillars and construction of footpaths, check dams, water holes, tourist viewpoints, public toilets, rain shelters, cloakrooms, shoe racks, community halls, nature interpretation centers. Restocking of blanks and degraded areas by aided natural regeneration and planting of native species have also been undertaken in some of the community reserves. Sitting benches for visitors and swings, seesaws and other children's playthings have also been provided in some of the community reserves. Renovation of places of worship located in some of these sacred groups has also been undertaken. Majority of land in Meghalaya is owned by communities and private individuals. The state therefore has limited scope for expansion of protected area network by notification of national park and wildlife sanctuaries. Notification of biodiversity-rich sacred groups and such other community-owned rich habitats of wildlife as community reserve is the only hope for expansion of protected area network in the state. The Forest and Environment Department is taking all possible measures to persuade the communities to allow the state government to notify rich habitats of wildlife as community reserves. As we have seen, progress so far is very encouraging. The Forest and Environment Department, with proactive cooperation and participation of local communities, is taking measures for protection, conservation and scientific management of areas which have already been notified as community reserves.